Good to see everybody this morning. Good to be here. Good to see everybody made it through another week. Tell you what, they sure are clicking away fast, aren't they? It's amazing to me. We say it all the time, but it really does amaze me how fast the time just whizzes on by. And I don't know, it's sobering. It's sobering. You look around and things that seem like they take forever to get here and forever to come to pass and all that kind of thing. And yet time just, it's gone. You look around at these little babies and I remember a whole world where none of them existed. And, everybody, the generation before you can say even more so that way. I was thinking this morning about a certain time of my life. On the way over here, her and I were talking about it, and I remembered this certain period of time in my life, and my three younger siblings, Daniel, Esther, and Elizabeth, didn't exist. They hadn't been born yet. And now here they all sit with their little babies and their children, and their babies ain't babies. They got little kids running around here, and I remember when they weren't even in the plans. It's good that God has other plans than we do. You ever thought about that? How much of a blessing it is that God's plans are not ours? We'd sure have a dull life if our plans was the plan that got picked, huh? That's for sure. Now I want to have you open your Bibles this morning to 1 Peter. I've talked about this before. It's been years ago. But I want to talk about it a little bit more this morning and add something to it here. 1 Peter chapter 4. I'm going to read starting in verse 7. It says this, "But the end of all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober and watch unto prayer. And above all things have fervent charity among yourselves, for charity shall cover the multitude of sins. Use hospitality one to another without grudging." Heavy words. Completely ignored words for the most part. In 100 different facets of our life. But reading on. "As every man hath received the gift, even so minister the same one to another, as good stewards of the manifold grace of God." So that's our scripture this morning. But the main scripture being verse 9 are use hospitality one to another without grudging. But I want to back up. I want to back up and talk a little bit about the end, and of course when you say that in the Christian realm of things in church and that kind of thing, everybody there is one big event that we all immediately our mind goes to, and that is the end of time, the Lord coming back, the second coming of Christ, all of that, the end. And I am looking forward to that day. There was a time in my life where even when I thought that, things was okay between me and the Lord, I was just like, there's some things I'd like to experience and accomplish here on this earth before that happens, though. And I suppose that for young people, that is a common feeling. And it's not necessarily, I wouldn't say that it's wrong, but it's just an indicator of youth and where priorities land in your life and in your mind. It's like trying to expect Monroe to, have a desire to get a job right now. He doesn't have that. He will someday. And I seen him, he was out at the camp. We went camping for a few days here over the end of last week. And he'd come out to the campground. Well, his thing now is he wants to carry stuff around. So I had firewood across the back of the trailer there, and he was just Back and forth. He was carrying chunks of wood and sticks and anything that he can manage to get up off the ground or pick up, he wants to carry it somewhere. And it's comical because he's just so little and he's trying to carry everything around. But it's endearing too because, you can see his little personality already starting to just burst forth. And he don't know what to do with it, but there it is. And I don't know. It's very endearing, and it's I don't know. I feel like we all have a responsibility to help nurture that the right way in him. Amongst a lot of other things, you see that in all these little kids. They all have things. But I don't know. Wanting to, experience things in life and all of that, and but nowadays I think about it and the Lord couldn't come back soon enough. And I have different reasons for feeling that way now. It isn't that I'm just disgusted with everything and I'm sick and tired of trying and I'm just wore out. And if he'd just come back, it'd give me a break. And I don't feel that way about it. It's just it would be the end of evil. And the end of sorrow. And the end of sin and what sin does to people's lives. And, the ever-present danger, I'll just say it that way, of what potentially could be, because it's all still going on. And all of that will be over the minute that he returns. The end. But that's not necessarily the end that I'm talking about per se. I mean, it's one of them, but the end of things. He said that the end of all things is at hand. You realize that the end of everything is always just right around the corner. The end of everything. The end of summer is just right around the corner. I love the changing of the seasons. It's one of the things that, I really appreciate that God made the way he did, because it is a testament to his character and his personality. I mean, he gives us a little peek around the corner, just like this cool weather we've been having. Who ever heard of it being 48 degrees in August and seeing your breath standing on the front porch in August? Yeah. Well, it's such a reprieve. And yeah, you get warm days and it gets back up in the 80s again and da-da-da. But how many times have we done this? Over and over again, and yet the end of summer is at hand. The end of all kinds of things is just always, and it's funny how it is, because we know this. We know that the end is imminent. Always. But we just don't know when. Always. And we don't know about what. Always. And the things that we know that there's an end coming to, we don't prepare for them. I mean, we try, but we don't really give it that much. It's just we have this weird disconnect in our minds about the reality of the amount of time between right now and the end of the things that we know are going to end. And we know when they're going to end. And it's almost like we're in denial always about change and about the end of something. There are people who don't handle the end of things very well at all. Matter of fact, a lot of us have problems with that. Well, why? Why do we have a problem with something ending? Now, if it's something that bothers you, or if it's something that makes you uncomfortable, or it's an unpleasant deal, we're all very excited and anticipating the end of something. Like hot summertime. I mean, you work out in it, and it's just every day you go out there, and it's 90 degrees by 9 o'clock, and you're just like, oh, Lord, just a cool breeze of fall, please. I can't wait. But we don't prepare for the things we know are coming, so we certainly don't prepare for the things that we don't know when they're coming. And it really causes a lot of problems for us. Not even mentally preparing. Even if that mental preparedness is just saying, I need to not hang on to certain things so tight because they're going to change. That's the reason why most people don't like the end of something, is because it means change, even if it's against your will. things are going to change. The bad times that you may be experiencing, they're going to change. And then, the good things that you're experiencing, they also are going to come to an end at some point. It's a mercy of the Lord that there are things in our life that are good things that don't ever come to an end. Things that we can find in His Word that's just an endless supply of encouragement and a resource for us as believers. But, and we can rejoice in the fact that don't ever end. You realize that for most people, especially non-believers, there ain't a single thing in their life that they experience in this life that doesn't have an expiration date, an end date on it. That's why the gift of God is eternal life. What a gift. Something that don't end. And matter of fact, and it's like an added bonus at the fact that when this mortal life ends, it is only the beginning of the thing He gave us that never ends. But it's always on everybody's mind in one way or another. The end of all things. People resist it. Think about the multi-trillion-dollar industry that the anti-aging industry is. I never paid one bit of attention to how much makeup cost because I never really spent no money on makeup. And then I had a house full of girls. And it is unbelievable to me. They'll go down here to the Bluff. Now, my bunch don't because their mother raised them to be frugal. But these ladies will go down here to Ulta Beauty down here at the Bluff and come out there and spend $200 or $300 and just have a couple things in their hand. It's a fact. I don't understand it. And these are young women that aren't old and wrinkly yet. And they'll go down there and buy this terribly expensive paint to change their look. Why? Well, there's this undertone to this world that things are going to end and you don't want them to. So you fight it all the way to the end. And are you going to win that fight? Nope. It doesn't matter how hard we resist it, or we don't agree with why it's happening, or we don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to participate in it. No, there's coming an end. There's coming an end. The seasons that change, I mentioned that, but the seasons of life. I look at, I mentioned there earlier about, even my kids and my sisters and all them with their little kids. And it just seems like it's always going to be that way. And it just, all of a sudden, it isn't. And it comes upon you quickly and suddenly. You know it's coming, but you don't prepare for it because you're too busy trying to just keep the fires out today. And and then you turn around a couple of times and they're all grown. And they all have their own things they're doing. It's the end. It's the end of a season of your life. If they didn't grow up and do those things, we'd be very concerned. Like underdeveloped. Something happened. Something's wrong, and they're not developing mentally and in their life and all of this where this it's the next step, the natural progression of life. And yet we don't prepare ourselves for watching them walk out that door and prefer the company of someone else. It has snuck up on me, in my life. And I had to contend with it in my own mind and in my own soul about, well, here's what it made me do. It made me realize that the reason I'd been doing a lot of the things I'd been doing for all of their life wasn't for them. It was for me. Because when they sprouted feathers and flew away, I felt betrayed somehow. Well, that's wrong. That's not right. Well, what's wrong about it? I didn't prepare. I didn't prepare for the end of a thing. Dad preached that message when we left the big building up here in town, the last service, the end of a thing. And it's a fact of life. It's a fact of life, and we don't prepare. And we're remiss for not preparing for the end of things. Youth, it has an end. You're only as young as you feel. Well, okay. But the years have a way of winning that battle. Time and weather and miles, they will catch up. And then there's the end of that season of your life that ushers you into the next season of your life. There's a fella that I'm thinking of, and I won't call his name. It's not an embarrassing thing or nothing, but he's a man that I know. And he's always been a go-getter. He lives up past us. And, he's always been a young old man, if that makes any sense. But I hadn't seen him, got to be around him in about a year. And they called me here a few weeks back and said, hey, we got a little job. If you want to come look at it, we'd like for you to do it. And so I drove up there to see him. And we had to walk down there to where the job was at this little barn. And they're catching up. He had to take a break on the way back up the hill to the house. Now, he wasn't suffering per se, like he wasn't letting on at all, but we stopped to talk about a peach tree, or we'd stop to talk about something else, but he had to catch his breath. And that kind of surprised me, but I got to thinking about it, and he's about 88 or 89 years old now. And it's like, wow. But here's the deal. Some do better in the game of life of like how long they can endure, but time wins the battle. And there's an end. And there's an end. Like I mentioned there, times of plenty come to an end. I don't know. I'm very hesitant to say that I'm glad that they do, because who loves to be impoverished or be lacking? Well, nobody does. But if all we ever knew was abundance, how much would you really appreciate the times of plenty? I mean, Nick, you and all y'all grow big gardens, and you're good at it. And you always got something that's coming into season the next round that we're all looking forward to, because everybody benefits from your garden. But if we had your big row of tomatoes 12 months out of the year, wouldn't nobody want to eat tomatoes after a year? That's a fact. I look forward to them tomatoes every year. But it's because they're just seasonal. They're just for a time. And you get to enjoy them for that time. And then there's an end. But hey, guess what's coming in? The next thing, the fall crops and all of that. And by the time that they play out, and then what time is it? Well, it's deer season, and it's time to go do things like that, and butchering and all of that. And it's one season leads into the next, which leads into the next. But there's times of plenty, and then there's times of lean. And the lean times come to an end as the next thing comes in. I mean, have I painted the picture in an understanding way? The end of my life. It's just right around the corner. Could be a lot sooner than I anticipate. The older that we get, her and I don't know. I was doing some math this morning, and, you've heard me talk about when Grandpa and Grandma took me out west for the first time. And I think if I did my math right, I think Grandpa was about 2 years older than I am right now when they took me out west. What? So you start thinking about that, and you start thinking about timeline, and you say, the whole concept. I mean, Dad going through this surgery here recently, and, health problems, and, you're in a different season of life. And the possibility, now I don't know what could go wrong. I mean, I guess there's 1,000 things that could, I reckon. But the possibility of something going wrong, young people don't think about that. It's not a possibility. That'll happen when I'm older. Well, I'm older now. I'm there kind of, and I'm thinking about these things, and I'm starting to try to make conscious choices about not eating that as much and this and that and the other. Why? Well, because I'm closer to the supposed end of life, or the possibility. I mean, I could go out here and get hit crossing 60 up here today, and that'd be the end of it. Or I might live to be 90 years old, and who knows? You don't know. The Lord knows. That's it. That's the only person that knows. But the guarantee is that there's an end. There's an end. There's something ending and something beginning, always right around the corner. I've kind of covered that. But reading on in our scripture here, verse 9 says, after he talks about the end of, he said in verse 7, but the end of all things is at hand. So he said, here's what you should do. You should be sober and watch unto prayer. And I think that what he meant by that was what we've just been talking about being prepared for what could happen. Mentally. We owe it to ourselves and to our children, to our parents, to our peers, to our church. We owe it to a lot of people. Everybody that's influenced by our being alive and being, in our life. To mentally prepare for kind of the unexpected, really. I mean, there's people all over, always, every day. People in this town right here that get bad news. They get bad news, and I've seen people get bad news and just be like, well, tomorrow's a new day. We're just going to just take it a day at a time and do the best we can. Trust the Lord. The Lord knows what we need. And, I mean, they meet it with that attitude. And I've seen people that I would expect to meet it with that attitude, get bad news and just fall all to pieces. And really, in all honesty, I've seen their situation not be nearly as dire as they let on that it is. But they don't, mentally, they never prepared for anything bad to happen to them. What's the old saying? You always hear about it happening to somebody else, but not you. Well, that's how everybody feels most of the time, because nobody prepares. And, I mean, come on, I'm not going to sit here on a high horse and say, I don't sit around thinking about what's the worst case scenario that could happen. I mean, Wyatt and them traveling all the way over there today, and I hold my breath just about every time they go, and I pray, Lord, just watch over them. And I can't sit and fret over it, because, I mean, I'd be sick all the time. And here, this is just the beginning of their life. I looked at Monroe walking around there at the camp there the other day and thought to myself, here he is, my little grandson, and we're just watching every step he takes, because I don't want him to stumble and fall around the trailer or something and bust his head on something metal, or, we're just following him around and trying to just protect whilst letting him do and explore and do all this stuff. And what... He'll grow up and he'll drive the car down the road someday and take off on trips and take his family and drive all over the West and go who knows where. And if I'm going to worry myself sick about it now, then the rest of my life is just going to be fretting and worrying until I die early from stress. I can't do that. So there's got to be some mental preparedness. Well, and some spiritual preparedness, you see. Because I have to trust something bigger and stronger than me and what I can do. I mean, there ain't but so much I can do, and then I'm powerless. The older I get, the less. Well, the more I'm realizing how little power and influence and pull that I really have as a person at all about pretty much anything. I've always heard the elders say that about trusting the Lord. You just got to trust the Lord. You need to trust the Lord. You need to be able to talk to Him and trust Him. And it sounds so cliche, but that is paired right along with the fact that the older you get, the more you realize you ain't really in control of anything. Nothing. You don't get to say anything about anything that amounts to a hill of beans. And it's kind of a sobering feeling when you really do realize that, well, because it changes your whole mentality about what your role is on this earth in the first place. You know, as a young parent, your job is to just keep them from dying and make sure that they make it, you know. And it's hard to just turn that off like a switch, but the fact is that there's so much more that your purpose actually is for than just that. That's such a short amount of time that is your job. And then after that, you know, you step into, that comes to an end for you. And then a different role opens up. You know, there's nothing more damaging in a family dynamic than to see parents with adult children and they won't stop trying to be their mommy and daddy. Seriously, they won't let them grow up. They won't let them take their licks. They won't let them pay their own bills. They won't let them, you know, handle their business and make some bad choices and deal with some consequences and learn some lessons. I mean, I've seen folks, old folks, that just follow their kids around to their early grave, trying to protect their children from, you know, falling down, so to speak. And you've missed it. You've missed the end of a season and the beginning of another one. And it ruins the kids. It ruins their life. It ruins their grandkids. It just ruins everything. But he said all that. He said, the end of all things is at hand. Be therefore sober and watch unto prayer. And then followed up by this. And above all things have fervent charity among yourselves. Well, how does that factor into the end of all things? Well, the end of things is hard. Some people don't have a problem with it at all. Maybe they disassociate themselves from the reality of the end of things. Who knows? Really, the truth of the matter is, everybody has a hard time in their own way with the end of something. And it's going to take some serious charity from all of us for each other to cope with it. You know, you've heard me say things about this before, but, you know, people who are loners have a spiritual problem. They really kind of do. You know, the Lord refers to us as his sheep. And a sheep will die if you remove him from the herd and leave him over there by himself. The flock, you take him out of the flock and leave him alone, he'll just lay down and die. He won't get up. Why? Because he's got to have his flock. He's got to have others to make it. The Lord made us that way. You know, he really did. And I see that resisted so hard in so many people's lives. In our churches, in our homes, in our families and stuff, there seems to be almost like this virtue to not being a burden to others. And it all stems from a place of pride, because I don't need nobody. I can paddle my own canoe. It really does boil back to that's the drive behind it all. Listen, I need you people. I need you to be involved in my life. You need me to be involved in yours, whether you think you do or not, and whether I think that I do or not. We need each other. And you'd think that in the day we live in, where everybody is so connected with these cursed things, that it wouldn't be an issue, that we would just always be connected. No. Here's what happens. Birds of a feather flock together, and they stay connected. In a dynamic of even a small church, you'll message the people you talk to, and you won't message the people you don't talk to. If you don't believe me, watch at church and see who talks to who. And he said, have fervent charity one for another. Among yourselves. That's what it says. Have fervent charity among yourselves. Why? Charity, because charity shall cover the multitude of sins. Well, whose sins? Yours, mine, mine towards you, yours toward me. And charity for each other among ourselves will help us get past all that and be there for each other as we all go through the changes of life and the ends of things and the beginnings of things. We're not going to make it if we don't have each other. I mean, can you make it alone? Well, there's been people that have, and they've leaned heavily on the Lord. But when that time of their life came to an end, did they just stay out in the wilderness by themselves because they discovered that they didn't need nobody but God? No. They found their people again. They found God's people again. And there's always something that you have to offer to someone else. I think that's another thing to take away from this, is that he was pointing out that you may feel like you're done. You know, all the seasons I'm in the last season of my life. And I've used up everything that was in my cup. And so now I'm just waiting for the ferry to come and get me. And if you're still breathing on this earth, you have somebody on this earth needs you for something. And God knows that. And that's why you're still here. And it ain't just old folks that feel this way. I have run across young people that don't feel like they have a purpose for living. They don't have anyone that has ever needed anything from them, they think. And, you know, the wrong emphasis has been put on things in their life to where they feel like that if they need anything from anyone, they're just a parasite on society. And then, you know, it makes them drowned in sorrow and in loneliness right in the middle of a crowd. And it's terrible. It's of the devil. The devil's the one that makes you feel that way, convinces you that you have no value and no purpose. Well, my goodness, what kind of a lie is that? Everybody has a reason for being alive. And if you don't feel like you have a reason, you may just be looking in the wrong places for the, you know. It may be, because here's the thing. We was talking about this morning. You ever seen that little cartoon? It's like not a cartoon, but it's like a animation as an example. And what it is, it's this guy and he has a cup. And he goes, he's praying, Lord, fill my cup. Fill my cup. And the Lord gives him something in his cup. And he looks at it, and he looks over, and that person there isn't anything in their cup. So he goes over and he pours it in their cup. And then he says, Lord, will you fill my cup? And the Lord fills it up a little bit more. And he just spends all his time just giving what the Lord gives him to someone else, to someone else, to someone else. And he's happy, and he's fulfilled, and he's helpful, and he is charitable. I mean, just like the scripture's talking about here. And then it shows the other side of the coin where the person's so lonely and so empty, and they say, Lord, fill my cup. And he fills their cup, and they protect it, and they just sit there, and they don't want to lose what's in their cup, because if I give it away, then I won't have anything to give to them. I won't have anything. And they just sit there, and it just stagnates, and they don't ever get anything else. They get that one thing, and then that's it. And they consume it on themselves. There's no charity in that. And then, you know, people who do that are coincidentally a lot of times the same people that are very resistant to the end of something, resistant to change, resistant to accepting the things that you cannot change, you know, and they become bitter, and they become cynical, and they consume everything upon themselves, and the value of what they have, really, there's no value in it at all. Then they get to thinking that somebody's trying to take what they have. And then they become defensive, and they become combative, and they become unapproachable, and they become very hurtful. And I hate to use the term toxic, but they become poison to everything that they touch. Anybody gets around them, you walk away feeling like you just got beat up. And you don't know why. Why? Well, because there's no charity. He said, above all things. That means all things. Above all things that you should have in your life, have fervent charity. That's something that's on fire. Something that never goes out. Fervent. Like, not charity like, we love you. You have a good... No, fervent. I mean, imagine if your child went missing, how fervently you would search for them until you found them? Would you just give it, well, we'll look in the morning. Maybe they'll turn up but while we're asleep. Oh, no. Fervent charity. Fervent. And then verse 9 says this. Now, I'm almost done. But this is, you always hear me say that when the Lord convicts me of something, it just seems to come out right here, up here, because it's... He says, use hospitality one to another without grudging. Verse 10, as every man hath received the gift, even so minister the same one to another, as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. We talk about it now, how that it's such a shame, how that in the day we live, nobody just drops by your house and says hi no more. You got to make plans, and people don't like people just dropping by and all this. Well, here's what I have discovered. If you like the person, you don't have a problem with them dropping by. If you don't like the person, that's the person that you're like, oh, no, why? What do they want? Why are they here? I looked up the definition of hospitality, and it says this, very simple. The act or practice of receiving and entertaining strangers or guests without reward, or with kindness and kind and generous liberality. That means even the people you don't want to see coming, you treat them the same way, for the same reasons, with the same fervency that you would treat someone that you love, that you are happy to see showing up. Now, in reality, how easy is that to do? Well, it's not easy. It's not easy. It seems like the people that you don't like to see coming have a knack for showing up at the worst time. We was just about to walk out the door, and you know that they come and bring a lawn chair, like metaphorically and sometimes literally. Like But if you have that spirit in you towards them of unhospitableness, you're gonna have that towards everyone, really. The ones that you are hospitable to, there will always be something in the back of your mind that is either benefiting you because of your hospitality, or there'll be a limit on your hospitality. You know what I mean? Okay, you can stay, but you can only stay for 2 hours because we were planning on going and getting ice cream, and you're not invited, so you understand what I mean. He says, use hospitality one to another without grudging. Why would he follow the verse up about having fervent charity for one another with that? Well, because there's a lot of feigned hospitality, and there's a lot of feigned charity floating around. And we all feel like that we're mentally preparing for the end of things and the beginning of things and all this kind of stuff because, hey, we practice charity with each other. But we really only practice it with the people who it either benefits us to practice it with, or just the ones that we prefer. And then the ones we don't, we just find a way to graciously just kind of not have them in our life. And, what did Jesus say to them? He said, when I was hungry and you gave me to eat, and I was thirsty and you gave me to drink. I was naked and you clothed me. And they said, we never did any of that. And he said, if you've done it to the least of these, you've done it unto me. Whoa, well, now that puts a whole different spin on hospitality. I mean, you may be able to pull it off and be hospitable grudgingly. Well, fine, come on in, I guess. Or have you ever been to somebody's house and they're like, oh, it's so good to come on in, and you know that they're not happy to see you there. You want something to drink? You want some sweet tea? Well, it's hard to take hospitality serious when it's grudging. And we do that. And we say, well, I only do it to the people I don't like. Well, if you'll do it to them, you'll do it to the people you do like. Because the people you do like will do things that are inconvenient for you sometimes. You'll do it to your own kids. Because life is not convenient. A lot of the time, life's not convenient. As my dad and me were messaging there last night. Now, we were camped out for a few days, and they thought they'd get a chance to come over and hang out with us for a little bit, but they didn't. And he gave me the list of all the things they'd been doing in the last, 24 hours, just about. And that's what I told him. Well, if we all waited for the perfect time for all the stars to align so that we all had the time to go do everything we wanted to do with each other, we'd never do anything with each other, ever. It's not always convenient. That's why hospitality can't be done with grudgingly, because it's not real. So, I don't know. I feel like this was a little bit scattered this morning, perhaps, but I don't know. Hospitality is one of those things that's supposed to be, it's required of a bishop. A man that's going to be a pastor. Oh, by the way, a pastor's family is supposed to be hospitable too. And if they're not, it kind of disqualifies him from the office. I mean, that's kind of what the Bible says. And that's not ever considered, really. I mean, some of the most unfriendly, unapproachable, hateful, cynical, bitter women that I've ever known have been pastors' wives. I mean, you can't even talk. They're like royalty. You got to make an appointment and they still won't see you. They don't want nothing to do with any of that. And that's real hard for a pastor to be taken serious when his family has no care or concern for other people. And so hospitality is something that as Christians we're called to. We're called to. Jesus made references to a lot of things about, if somebody asks you for something, give them more. If they ask you to go a mile, go 2 with them. Go 2 miles. Well, what is that? Well, that's selflessness, but hospitality does require selflessness. So, as we go through these changes in life and the ends of seasons, the beginnings of things, good and bad, we need each other. We need fervent charity for each other to help us get through this. And that is shown to each other through genuine hospitality that doesn't have, that's not grudging. I kind of don't want your help if I know you don't want to help me. And you're the same way. You're the same way. So let's help each other make it through all this to the end. Amen.